I'll be honest, when I first saw the headlines, I actually did agree with you. And I thought, what on earth does a prince know about quitting jobs? Because you're right, we are in the COVID era. There's so many hardships. People do have to do multiple jobs. My parents have two jobs and they have had my entire life. I know hard work and I know how hard it is to feel joy in the workplace. But when I looked into the context of what he said, there is something called the Great Resignation, and more people around the world are quitting jobs now that aren't bringing them joy. And they are putting not just mental health first, but the stress of the pandemic on their work and home life, things that make them miserable. Like in the past, women would typically quit their jobs to have children. These days, a lot of women want to carry on with their jobs. So men are having to find more flexible work options to be able to support two working parents. So I thought it was really interesting that Microsoft conducted a global survey that showed a massive 41% of all workers are thinking of quitting. And I think it's important to remember as well that when you're unhappy in your job, and that could be because you're being overlooked, it could be bullying, it could be that you're experiencing a burnout, chronic stress, which then leads to physical health problems. It can impact not only on your professional life, but also on your personal life and your relationships. So, of course, quitting is subjective for everyone. Not everyone, myself included, is in a position where you could quit your job with nothing to go to. Everyone has different financial obligations and dependents. And I think sometimes to quit for happiness and for mental health, there's sacrifice in there, whether that's selling a car or moving back in with friends or with family. Of course, that's a privileged position as well. But I do think that these days, my parents would disagree with this statement as well, but work is more than just a job now. It's friends, it's community, it's lifestyle, it's all encompassing. And I feel that you don't have to always be trapped by your circumstances. And yes, that's a very privileged thing to say. And yes, not everyone has the luxury of that. But if you are suffering from anything in your job, you can move.
The vast majority of people do not have the luxury and the privilege to take that position. And Dawn, I think this whole scenario proves that Prince Harry is actually on another planet, because some of the happiest people I know in my life are folk who aren't in jobs that they love, but it means that they don't live to work, they work to live, and they focus on life outside of work because they know that they have to go and do their job in order to put food on the table, to put a roof over their head, to pay for their children's education. So I just feel like his comments were so off base.
I don't think he's reading the room on this one at all, Dan. It's all very well with such an incredibly privileged position. I mean, let's face it, he doesn't actually work at the moment, does he? He seems to get paid millions of dollars for being the face of various companies, and for Netflix, who doesn't appear to do much for them. And Netflix, a company, by the way, that's stitching his own family up, by the way. And when your daddy gives you £30 million, as Charles has funded his lifestyle. And, let's face it, a man in his late 30s should not be living off of daddy's money still. It's just incredibly privileged to say that. And, of course, yes, Ashley's right. Your mental health is incredibly important. And if you are lucky enough to have a job that you are very unhappy in, that you then leave, that is understandable. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about coming to the end of a pandemic in this country. People are worried about keeping the roofs over their head. They're worried about putting food on the table. They're worried about how they're going to pay the increased taxes that are coming up, the green taxes that are coming up, the increased national insurance we're going to have to pay. They're worried about education and health and all of those things. They don't have the luxury of thinking, I'm unhappy at work, and then I just leave and go and do something else. Look, in theory, in an ideal world, it's lovely, but Harry is just not reading the room where most ordinary people are now. I can hear Meghan's voice as well talking through him, definitely on this one. And I just think he needs to actually be a bit more aware of what ordinary people are going through in this country.
Yeah,
And